Procurement imperative, resilience, responsibility, reinvention. The world in 2025 is fragmented and fast-moving. Business models are under pressure from geopolitics to generative AI. For businesses, resilience now depends on reconfiguring supply chains, rethinking talent, and redefining value. In 2025, procurement isn't just responding to risk. It's shaping how organizations grow, innovate, and stay competitive. Leaders want procurement to manage global risk, AI disruption, and ESG compliance, but only about a third of executives are highly confident their teams can deliver. As procurement takes more responsibility and oversight of business resilience aspects, procurement's leaders' confidence in their own abilities hangs below the other C-suite. AI and orchestration are reshaping workflows from sourcing to supplier risk intelligence. Whilst 72% feel confident using AI for productivity, only 55% feel confident using AI for strategy. The mandate is clear. The expectations are high. The time to act is now. To lead in 2025, procurement must measure what matters, leverage technology and upskill to close the capability gap, and work closely with its partners in this volatile environment.
What you've just seen is a very short snippet of some of the research that we've been working with. Good afternoon, my name is Gordon Donovan. I'm Global Vice President of Research for SAP Ariba, and I'm delighted that John's joined me.
John Ferguson, I work for Economist Impact. I'll tell you a bit more about that very briefly, part of the Economist group, but I'm not a journalist, not the newspaper. We are sort of the research and amplification arm of the Economist group, and we work with great partners to bring this sort of research to life.
And we've been working together for the last 4 years on this research, producing various different pieces of papers that have come out over the last 4 years. The difference with this research is that over 2,000 people take the study for a start-off, which probably makes it, if not then certainly one of the largest studies about procurement in the world. But the unique thing about this particular study is that whilst it's a study about procurement, it's a study that asks lots of different C-suite people about procurement. So it doesn't just ask procurement about procurement, it asks the CFO, it asks the Chief Operating Officer, the Chief HR Officer, the Chief Supply Chain Officer, as well as the Chief Procurement Officer. And what that gives us, I think, is it gives us a very rounded view of what procurement is and where it's going. Because surprisingly, and this might shock everybody in the room, sometimes not everybody agrees about what the direction happens to be, and the CFO might have a different opinion than the COO. So the video, and we'll give you a link at the end. There's a link you saw in the video, but there's a QR code at the end, which will take you through to the Economist Impact site, where you can download the papers, the infographic, watch the full video. And it's all what we call ungated, i.e. you don't need to leave your contact details, you can just read it, because the idea is to hopefully imbue some different ideas and some thoughts around what your peers around the world are going to see. But in the next 16 minutes and 35 seconds, we're going to give you the 3 key highlights that kind of jumped out to us about this study. And the first one, as you can see, point number 1, so we asked the question around, what are the organizational risks that you want procurement to focus on over the next 5 years? And the top answer, as you can see, 64% said geopolitical risk. So if you can solve that by 4 o'clock, that would be really handy, whilst at the same time driving about 5% worth of cost reduction, that would be perfect. I don't think that's what they mean. I think what they mean here is to recognize that this is going to drive an awful lot of uncertainty in your category strategies. And therefore, recognizing the impact of geopolitical risk is going to be absolutely crucial. And we had a conversation this morning about the impact on broader supply chains.
Absolutely. We've known now for a few years that geopolitics is one of the fundamental drivers of the global economy. So it's understandable. We see it on our phones, on the news every day. So it's there every day, and this result makes sense. The challenge that I see when working with colleagues and procurement professionals is interpreting what that geopolitical risk means for you and your business and your procurement and supply chains. That's the challenge I see when I work with you all. People want more data, people want more analysis, more insight, because they know geopolitics matters, but everyone's still trying to work out what the heck does it mean for me.
And I think when we broaden the question out here a little bit, so again, organizational risk areas for procurement, geopolitics is absolutely one of the big drivers. And you can see that, and this was something that we noticed for the first time this year, over the 4 years that we've been doing this research, there's actually alignment between the organizational risk areas that the business want procurement to focus on and procurement strategic priorities. So previously, it's all been about supply chain visibility, but supply chain visibility has never made it to the strategic priorities. Whereas this year, and I've identified just one of the 4 strategic priorities, which is supply chain, supply-based reconfigurations. Organizations across the world are thinking about what does all of this geopolitical dynamics mean for them? And what they've identified globally, and I've split it out so that you can actually see some of the different personas and the different regions here. They're saying that reconfiguring, reorganizing supply chains, reorganizing supply bases is incredibly critical. And you can actually see more so in North America than the rest of the world, but don't be hidden from that. We're still over 44% globally have said supply chain reconfiguration. So you see the link between the geopolitical risk and supply chain, supply-based reconfigurations in terms of what they're seeing, probably more so in North America than the rest of the world. I don't know what's happening in North America that might change some of those supply chain reconfigurations. I haven't watched the news recently, John.
It might be pretty obvious what's driving that result. But Gordon, can we do a snap poll very quickly? So I encourage everyone to download the report. Clearly I'm biased, but I think it's a great piece of research we've been doing with SAP for 4 years. But one of the fascinating findings in the research on top of this was that this was a question about the short term. We also asked about the medium term of 3 to 5 years. And our great respondents thought that geopolitical risk was going to become less risky, quite significantly less risky in 5 years' time.
Yep.
Snap poll time. Just please put your hand up. I'm not going to hold you to account. But who thinks geopolitical risk is going to become less risky in 5 years' time? Anyone? Don't be shy. This is not scientific. Who thinks geopolitical risk will be either the same as it is now or more in 5 years' time? There you go. And this is the problem. I mean, we had great respondents. Our respondents are super smart, of course. But in this room, we just found, very scientifically, that most people think geopolitical risk will at least stay the same or get worse. And that's the challenge.
Yep.
There is incredible uncertainty about the next 3 or 4 or 5 years on this point.
I think if we broaden this away as well and looking at some of the other areas of risk, the next 3, and I'm going to hone in on the last one in a little bit, AI was consistently seen not only as an opportunity and not only as a strategic priority, but look, it was also seen as the second greatest risk. And I want us to remember that because our very last point is all about the issues around AI and around cybersecurity. But it was seen consistently as the number 2 risk in both the short term and the long term. The risks both for the organization, but also possibly for the broader supply chain and the due diligence that's actually required as well. And look at number 3. Sustainability. Sustainability was identified as the 3rd organizational risk. From a strategic priorities perspective, it was seen in Europe as the number 1 short and long-term strategic priority. Less so in North America.
Absolutely. And there's this funny term, I didn't make it up, but when I work with your colleagues and your other C-suite leaders and business leaders, people telling me they're green hushing, right? It's not greenwashing, that's a totally different thing, but people are sort of still caring about, still trying to navigate sustainability, but just not talk about it too loudly. So for some of our North American colleagues, they're still engaged in sustainability. They're just not necessarily shouting it from the rooftops anymore. Yeah,
we were in a roundtable in May in London, and that was actually identified at that roundtable as well, where they were saying, we're still going to carry on with our supplier diversity projects, we're just not going to call them supplier diversity projects anymore, we're going to call them supplier development projects instead, which is exactly to your point.
And this is why you're all so busy, right? You're dealing with geopolitics, which we said has massive uncertainty. AI is both massively exciting, but also carries some risks. And climate change and sustainability is still real. So this is why you're all so busy. Hence, I tell my children why I have a job.
Okay, so let's take a look at the operating model. So the operating model as an organizational risk piece here that we're looking at. And I don't mean procurement's operating model, I mean organization operating model. So the business want procurement to focus on organizational operating model. It's number 4 in the short term, it's number 3 in the long term. So it's actually getting more important as we come in. I can't think what might be driving operating model changes, but maybe we can dig into this a little bit. So when we start thinking about and start reviewing all of the different pieces of research, not just the great research that the Economist Impact and SAP Ariba do, but also more broadly. I'm talking like BCG and Bain and McKinsey, all talk around organizations wanting to improve their competitiveness and improve their margin performance, in some ways recovering from the previous few years where they've been hammered somewhat in terms of this margin performance. So let's just remember that. Improve competitiveness, improve margin performance. In general, you seek to increase your prices to your customers, reduce your costs, your internal costs, and we heard Barbara, my colleague, my boss, let's be clear, mentioned earlier that, was it 70% of a McKinsey study said that 70% of CEOs said that they wanted to reduce cost. Or you find new customers and you expand your market. And generally, those are the three ways that you can do this. So improve competitiveness, improve market position. So last year, in last year's Economist Impact study, we asked the question around, so what is your cost base? Where do you spend your money? So not third-party services, we're talking about their entire organization. And what over half of the respondents identified was that their top cost was their employees. It was their direct payroll, not their contingent labor, not their third-party services. They made up between 5 and 15%, depending on which industry you were in. But over half of the people identified that direct payroll was the biggest part of their costs, and you can see between 25 and 45% was direct payroll. So again, bringing this back to operating model evolution and what's going to happen. And as I showed you on that list, in the longer term, over 40% identified the operating model changes as something that they want procurement to focus on and what that could possibly mean. Now, I'm going to broaden this out a little bit. So if we're thinking about operating model changes, we've asked the question around the external workforce, contingent labor. And what we've been finding over the last 4 years is that people are expanding the use of the external labor. So we asked the question, so why are you expanding the use of the external labor? And 2 answers have come through this year. And when I say, so I work in research, and when I see these 2 numbers come up and a gap of 50% between the second number and the third number, kind of tells me that it's just these 2 numbers that I need to worry about. So I'm going to share those 2 numbers with you. And maybe this isn't going to shock and amaze you, but the top reason why people are seeking to drive the increased use of external workforce is cost savings. What are we talking about? Top 1, improve competitiveness, improve margin performance. The biggest driver of external workforce is cost savings. Why else might you think about changing your operating model? It might be because you don't necessarily have the skills. Well, that's because the second reason why organizations want to use external workforce is because they don't have access to these specialized skills because the market is changing too much. We've recently been doing a whole talent cliff thing, and I think I saw some numbers that 30 million people in the US alone will retire by the end of this decade. So 30 million people are exiting the workforce by the end of this decade. There is a talent shortage, not just because they haven't got the skills, there's a physical labor shortage. There is declining birth populations. I think I saw 10% reduction in undergraduate enrollments over the last 12 months. So you are seeing this massive talent shortage that's coming up, hence the reason why we have people using external workforce. So cost saving, access to specialized skills, and we also asked the question around, all right, if you're going to use the external workforce for this, what's your priorities for the next couple of years? What are you thinking about doing? Well, again, there were 2 answers that kind of jumped out. Number 1 was improving SOW management, was improving scope of work, statement of works, however you want to call that. I've done a separate piece of research with Art of Procurement, and it identified that whilst 56% of organizations have the ability to either impose damages and use a big stick to help motivate organizations to deliver things, less than half of the people who have that actually have any KPIs in their contracts, which is a bit of a problem. So, improving SOW management, and why do you want to improve SOW management? Because apparently, according to, again, this research, 38% of organizations are going to be increasing not the outsourcing of procurement, but the outsourcing of big chunks of things within their business. John, what are you seeing when you talk to your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I'm full of doom and gloom, despite being Australian, I tend to talk to your colleagues about geopolitics and macroeconomics and all this sort of stuff. The thread through all of this for me is just the macroeconomic uncertainty. So in a more uncertain environment, clearly, with revenues being challenged on one side, cost saving is necessary. But similarly, the external workforce for me, linking to uncertainty, it's just more flexible. It just allows yourselves and our respondents to be more agile, more flexible. And in an uncertain environment where you don't know in 6 months' time, are we going to be doing that, or are we going to be doing this, having external contractors, contributors, is just an easier way to do business.
And I think, as we've just talked about, we are going to see this increasing and consistent volatility, and the ability to respond is going to be critical. Okay, so we can't come to DPW without talking about technology, so we're going to talk about technology. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about specific pieces of technology, I'm going to talk about more broadly. And this might shock you again. That didn't get fixed. Oh, well, never mind. So you've got a lot of information that's just come up. So let me take you through this first bit. We ask the same question every single year around what are the top technology trends that you in procurement want to use over the next 12 to 18 months. And in shocking news, 54% said generative AI. I know that's brand new information, and you're absolutely gobsmacked by that piece of information. What I will say was it was also the number one last year, but the gap between 1 and 2 has grown by about 15 to 20%. When I start looking at the differences over the course of the year. Number 2 was intake management. I'm sure there's people from Zip and Oro and Tonkean out there. That's exactly the same number this year as it was last year, which I thought was quite interesting. All of these things that we took, if anyone reads the Gartner hype cycle, you might notice it from the innovation trigger line. Give me a little bit of leeway. Generative AI was right at the peak of inflated expectations last year when we started pulling this information together. So we can see what that means from a technology perspective. Now, how does that actually come back into what we do and the skills that we're having? Well, you can see that over 2/3 identified the top skill for procurement as being AI proficiency and ethics. Interesting. The issue that I would find with some of those skills is that what I consider as being the top 2 skills for procurement, one is change management, and one is curiosity. We're actually at the bottom, which I think we just probably need to have a think about what that means for how we interpret some of this data. But let's keep going. So 2/3 said AI proficiency is the top skill needed for procurement, and 46% said that digital adoption is the top KPI to measure procurement performance. Now that, I think, is fascinating. Not cost savings. Cost savings was somewhere down the bottom. It was around about 4th or 5th in terms of those. But actual digital adoption. And interestingly, again, Barbara mentioned about collaboration earlier. And one of the benefits from collaboration, according to our research, is increased digital adoption, between better internal collaboration between suppliers and partners. Now, I've mentioned AI a couple of times, and it being a massive opportunity. And I also mentioned it as a risk. And I wanted to show you this chart here. So we asked the question around, of all the things happening in the world, what's going to change, not procurement strategy, what's going to make your organization stop and fundamentally reshape and change what your strategy is? And it wasn't even close as to what the answer was. So that dark green is critical impact. You'll see that cyber and cybersecurity was at 65%, and nothing else was over 22. John, what are you seeing from a cyber perspective?
I mean, I think there's a lot of great information here, and to me, this reminds us that any transformative technology has both an upside and a downside. The downside is the cyber risk. Clearly, you're all in legitimate businesses. There are illegitimate businesses using AI, and that's the challenge. But just quickly, Gordon, I also want to say on the upside, there's a lot of upside with AI, but I think there will be winners and losers. You clearly got to have the right technology and data, but I also see the best companies getting the right culture, skills, change management, and all that internal stuff right to complement the technology and data that comes in. So I think there will be winners, but it's getting that whole entire AI governance, AI culture right, and then they'll see those benefits.
I think the cultural change is right, and it does allow us to put a Spider-Man quote in there about with great power comes great responsibility. I think that's the, see, who thought we could get a Spider-Man quote into a procurement congress, but there we go. Okay, hopefully that's given you a snippet and a taste. There's a QR code up there that takes you to the Economist Impact site where you can download all of this data. You can watch the full video. There's infographics. There's specific things on there as well that if you want to take a look at CPO data in Europe, you can download that. CFO data in Asia, you can download that. So please feel free to take a QR code, go to that site, download the data, have a read of it, and think about what it means for your organization and how you're going to help elevate procurement to really deliver the value. With that, thank you very much for your time and attention this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.